Welcome back to the Diary of a CMO, the podcast where I sit with CMOs and thought leaders in marketing and related media, tech, and creative industries. We'll talk about how they got to where they are, strategies and life lessons we can learn from them to help build a career, business, and ultimately a life that we love. I hope you enjoy, and please subscribe. Hello, everyone. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the third episode 3 of the Diary of a CMO. I deeply appreciate everyone who continues to follow the conversations we're having on here. The podcast is available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. And so please continue to tune in, continue to download, continue to watch. Today, I am humbled. I said this before we hit record. I'm humbled and I am privileged to have on the pod today a guest that I have looked up to for easily about 10 plus years now. I remember I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time when he was at Nutrisema as the marketing director. That was my first opportunity to meet him, even though I'd known of him before then. And since then, I have not taken lightly the privilege of access to be able to reach out and have him also respond. He is a father, and I dare say forefather of advertising, and even broader marketing communications conversation, whether in the Nigerian market or on the African continent as a whole. He is a perfect gentleman. I'm sure everybody who knows him knows that he's a perfect gentleman, and he just sets the example of. Sorry, I think I'm blushing, even if that's possible. He's a perfect gentleman. His experience in the marketing communications industry spans decades. Right from his time at Cadbury, where I believe he spent close to about 13 years or 16 years off and on, and all the way to today, where he runs Nitro 121, an advertising and marketing consultancy firm. It is my privilege, it is my honor to have on the podcast a distinguished gentleman, Mr. Lampe Omoyele. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me on this pod today. I wanted to give people who are meeting you for the first time. I mean, I'm here. I've met you before. I've followed, some of the things that you have done over the last decade or so. But there's some people who probably are hearing of you and meeting you for the first time. For the sake of those people, how would you introduce yourself?
All right. Thank you, Tayo, for inviting me. Indeed, I consider it as a privilege and a pleasure. And so, like Omoyele, I have worked in the marketing space for over 30 years. More precisely, started my career at Cadbury, Nigeria on the 16th of July, 1990.
Well, you have
And
the
it was
perfect date.
I remember because for me, it's really a significant date because I have degrees in sciences. I have a BSc and MSc in biochemistry, but I really was seeking to work within the advertising space, interestingly. And the jobs I sought for at that time it was to be a copywriter. However, within the context and of the time, it was difficult to get a role within advertising as a copywriter because of my science degrees.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and it was interesting because when I would write application letters, I would say application to be a copywriter, and my first paragraph will say that I do recognize that my science degrees may appear to be a limiting factor, but I just appeal that you invite me for a conversation. All right. I had a portfolio of my writings, my poetry, my short stories. And also, all I was looking for was an opportunity to have a conversation and sell myself. But back in those days, in the late 80s and thereabouts, I don't think that there was as open an approach as we have today. So I didn't get one single response. So it was really for teachers that in my application as a management trainee at Cadbury, having gone through different stages, at the final stage, while the last batch of about 17 of us from 1,000 applicants who had applied for management trainee roles, the head of HR came to all of us, about 17, and said, look, by the way, you need to let all of you know that you're being considered for sales and marketing roles. And apparently something showed on my face, but he misread what my face was saying, so to speak. He said yes to me, that yes, Omoyele, you probably thought that because of your science degrees that you probably be considered for the factory or a technical role, but that we have observed you through the interview stages and we think you do well in sales and marketing. Now, but he misread, because actually I heard that, my heart leapt up, and within me I was saying, oh, praise God. Okay, because I was looking for a role outside of the sciences, right? And so he left, and but immediately he left, I then turned to another candidate and I said, what's marketing? Because I had no idea about what marketing is. I just knew that I wanted to work within a creative space. And when went into the interview, met with the sales and marketing director, and he asked me, "Oh, by the way, do you know you're being considered for sales and marketing role?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What do you know about marketing?" I said, "Nothing, sir." He said, "And you don't mind?" I said, "I will learn. I will learn." And I got the job, and that really was my approach all through. Learn, learn, learn. And I think 30 years on, I am still learning. And so that's how I got into the marketing space. Worked in Cadbury for 18 years, 14 years in Nigeria, and then the last 4 years working out of East Africa. I went into other roles in sales and marketing, including telecoms, where I worked with Zain, which is now called Airtel. Worked with Nutricima, which was a member of the PZ Cussons group. Moved on to GSK as Africa Marketing Director for Family Nutrition, and then moved on to the research side. Worked with Nielsen as Managing Director for Nielsen in West Africa. And after my time in Nielsen, started up a consulting firm, a boutique called Lucent Consulting, and then also added on Nitro 121, a marketing advertising firm, which I run as the managing director. So that is, in a nutshell, what my
Wow.
career has been to date. I'm still
Wow.
learning.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for that intro. There's so much to unpack, even from that intro itself, in terms of life lessons, you know. And I think that sometimes as younger professional, because you're still young, sir, but
Yes, sir.
as a younger
Yes, sir.
professional, um, we tend to think that there is a difference between your between who you are professionally and who you are as a human being. And I think that as I listen to your story, even some of the things I'm also hearing for the first time, it's so refreshing to know that that's kind of how you started and you are where you are now. It's such a remarkable story. Such a remarkable story. You know, when you mentioned late 80s, I had a smile on my face because I was probably still in was in underwear. Right. Oh my goodness! Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for joining in. I think one of the bigger conversations I wanted to have with you today, apart from your journey, of course, is your perspective on two major conversations. One is regarding the conversation of talent within the marketing space, and in terms of um, talent discovery, talent growth, talent acquisition, and so on and so forth. because I think that is a real challenge. Someone would even say that it's almost like a crisis, sort of, in terms of, how as an industry we are bringing in talent into the space. And there's multiple factors around that. But again, I would like to get a perspective on that first. And then second thing is regarding policy making. Policy making is an interesting one and sometimes touchy one, especially within the Nigerian market, and I dare say broad across the continent as well. So let's start with the talent one. What can we do as an industry to drive more talent acquisition into the marketing space? And not just marketing talent for talent's sake, but quality talent um, as an industry. How can we do that better? And I suspect that we might segue into what you do as the provost of Orange Academy. So let's try to unpack that for the next few minutes.
Thanks, Rachel. Great question. And so let me contextualize it and put into perhaps different words from what you have already raised. So I
Right,
think that there are the two perspectives around talent within the marketing space in Nigeria and I guess across Africa. There's the issue of width
right,
and the issue of depth. So let me start with the width. I think, first of all, there is not a major issue of getting people into the marketing space or into
right.
the marketing communication space. In fact, I think therein probably lies the challenge, which is also paradoxical, in
Mm,
that many people consider themselves as marketers or marketing communications practitioners. However, the depth is an issue.
right,
Now, what has driven perhaps the width and is, and this is with all due respect to the digital marketing space, the digital marketing has kind of democratized, if you will,
right,
the door
right,
for marketing practice.
right.
Now, because a lot more people, therefore, can communicate on social media, there is that belief, perhaps erroneously, that the fact that you can communicate on social media, you can put a post on social media, you can do some
Therefore,
measure of digital marketing, it therefore makes you a marketing person or a marketing practitioner.
right,
But then it's very superficial because marketing is not just about the social media posts, it's not just about creating awareness. Marketing in a broader sense, involves the classic four P's of marketing: the product, the price, the
place,
place, and the
promote.
promotion. Today's marketing tends to focus a lot more around the promotional parts, where the marketing communications also fits in. But even marketing communications is just one part of the promotional mix.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the issue where the depth comes into question,
right,
in that while we have a broad spectrum of people playing in the marketing space, we need to see how we build competences, build skills, and professionalism along with integrity in the practice of marketing and marketing communications. That's where I see a challenge. Now, how do you resolve this challenge, or how do you make things better? The point then comes in terms of training. There's also the issues around certification. It also requires discipline, diligence on the part of those who are practitioners, whether you are experienced or whether you're a neophyte just starting. When I was giving my introduction, I said that I started my career with a learning mindset. which has continued, I dare say, till now. So I think there's a requirement for learning, for training, an open mind, and also being exposed to case studies and experiences from across the world, having role models that or mentors that people can relate with, and also for mentors to be available to make the sacrifice to also help in terms of the training and development. And that's, as you mentioned, it's part of what we trying to do at Orange Academy and some other schools that I know other people are involved in to just try and improve the depth. There's a lot
Right.
of width, but we need to focus on skills development to ensure that the quality of marketing and marketing communications practice improves significantly.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. I like the analogy of width and depth. That's I think that really captures it. Still on the conversation of talent, I think that it's in recent times, at least from my experience, I've seen that there appears to be some sort of imbalance when you look at the quality of talent on the agency side, and then you look at the quality of talent on the brand side. And this is not so much for senior level. Uh, I'm speaking more around mid management and downwards. Um, is there what are the ways that between the agency and the brands we can drive better collaboration so that we are all as an industry or ecosystem growing at the same rate?
Right. So my quick answer to that would be obviously looking at training and development.
Right,
I think on the client side, especially multinational companies,
right,
there's a lot of training and investment
right,
in development. Now,
right,
that in part is because there's access to global best practice, there's
right,
access to what the multinational companies are doing across the various companies
right,
that within the group. So there's that access and there's a consciousness.
right,
What can the agency side of the ecosystem learn from that? It therefore it means that even if you don't have access to being part of maybe a global affiliation, there has to be a deliberateness to identify where the skill gaps are and
right,
invest in training. So even if it's local training, invite experts within the industry to share with the team, having identified where the skill gaps or knowledge gaps can be, and also have specific training and learning interventions for members of staff. So learning and development needs to be put up a lot higher
front and
within
center.
the agencies. What we try to do at Nitro, and we, in 1-to-1, I dare say we can do a lot better, is we have sessions that we call Lenospheres, where we bring experts, either or more experienced people, either from external or internal, to share. We also then encourage people to also have learning experiences themselves, because
Right,
ultimately what I've seen, and I think that those in HR and learning and development terrain would say that um, the growth of a person is dependent on about 70% is dependent on what you learn on the job,
right,
and therefore, as you're executing your job, take it as a learning experience,
right,
and as you're learning, you ask yourself, how can I do this better? And then the balance
right,
of 30% is training interventions that could be external of things that you read. So it has to be looked as a totality.
right,
Having said that, I do think, however, that the quality of marketing practitioners, and it speaks again to the earlier question about the depth. So whether it is on the client side or the agency side, I think that the issue of depth is still relevant, and I think across board, whether client or the agency side, there needs to be a renewed focus, emphasis on building competencies either
Right.
way. And I think that
Mhm.
once both sides become more competent, both sides can also begin to learn from one another
From
and
one
grow
another.
together.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. On a lighter note, I've been following the memoirs of a brand manager,
So yeah,
and it's such an interesting read because the intention is for it to be lighthearted, I imagine. But at the same time, it's a peek into what your journey has been like. I'm going to refer to episode 10,
okay.
or should I say part 10? Your Ilorin story. Those
Yeah.
who are listening, who are wondering what Ilorin is. Ilorin is one of the I think one of the most historical towns in Nigeria. So you can Google it and do a bit more research. But sir, if you don't mind, why did you start Memoirs of a Brand Manager, and how's it going?
All right. So let me first of all say that this is my lazy way of trying to build up members for my book.
Okay,
All right. So I actually started. So I actually started memoirs. I think if I remember right, probably about the year 2018 or 2019,
okay,
and I started trying to write a book. But I find it
okay.
was taking time, and you do require discipline to
Yeah,
write a book. So
yeah,
so what I found was, look, I said to myself, if I'm struggling to write the book at a stretch, why don't I just start writing snippets? So so the first time I wrote a snippet, it was quite long. It was a real long article,
wow,
and I said, you know what, I'm just going to put it out on LinkedIn. So at least I'm compelling myself to write. So it was a way of also putting myself to compel myself to write. So I
right,
did the first memoir, like I said, about 2018 or 2019, and it was quite long. It wasn't just a post; it was a real article. And aside from like when I got into marketing, and the response was quite interesting and revealing. And so I got on to memoir to three, and people kept on trying to ask, "When's the next one? When are you going to write the next one?" And so, so you know how it is. So it was more like demand. This was not a situation where demand was outstripping supply.
that's a good place to be in anyway. But I get you.
So I just said, okay, rather than write long articles, I'll just put things as they come to my mind. I just put things. So I actually have compiled a few of those bits and posts. So they actually have on my website. So I actually have a website, lampe.omoyele.com.
Okay,
And so so it's almost like curating those
right,
posts as I get inspired. And the hope is that when I hope I've gotten enough, I can then pull them all together.
together.
So that really was inspiration. Tell my story, but like you rightly pointed out, there's a certain style. I'm hoping, my style lighthearted, but I hope that in telling the story that there are learnings as
Absolutely,
well.
absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for taking the time to document your journey and your story in a way that others can follow. Earlier today, I published on LinkedIn, and the title was "The Concept of Legacy."
Mm.
And even from a young age, I have been deeply fascinated by that, and not just legacy within the context of after you have gone,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
while you are here, how what have you done?
yeah,
And I think that there's a lot for younger people to take from that. And this is not about marketing. This is not about
yeah,
advertising.
yeah,
It's just about life. It's just about
yeah,
being a
absolutely.
human being.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the point, if I may, the point you're making is valid. Yeah. So yeah, we're having this conversation around marketing, but what I found, and so you use the learning experience. But therein, even though it was within the context of sales and marketing, but therein for me was also a reinforced learning, about how you can manage conflict, how you can manage difficulty within career and life, and how hopefully at times a dose of humility just helps you.
Right.
And I think that
Right.
to situate it within the context of marketing and sales, I found that it's a very very important learning for me, because you will meet obstacles on the way, and those obstacles could be colleagues or seniors within the work environment. It could be consumer. How do you understand the consumer better in
Right.
order to win with the
Right.
consumer?
Right.
So
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Speaking of being an all-round good human being, I wanted to touch on. I wanted to touch on.
I'll leave that to God Almighty to determine. But please
Uh,
go on.
I wanted to touch on your demeanor. I'm sorry, like this podcast is both to educate, inform, but it's also my selfish opportunity
Yeah.
to have some conversations that I would like to have with people that I'm bringing on. I'm just curious, like this virtue, this demeanor of being a gentleman, and you're not the one saying it. At least I'm the person saying it. So it's based on what I've seen, and even when I talk to my peers, it's the same impression. I'm just curious, like how do we, as a generation, because it appears that it's even more important today.
Mm.
How do we, as a generation, build gentlemen, perfect gentlemen? Because it looks like decorum is out the window. How do we restore that in society at large?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, human beings, each of us, we are different. We have different personalities. We have different temperaments. So
Right.
so I think that's first of all a point that I'd like to make. Some of that is innate. Some of it is
Mhm.
innate. Personalities and temperaments. Some of it is innate. Some you can make a conscious effort to build and to develop. Okay. There's also, if you will, there's also the um, context, cultural context, background context, and I don't want to say it, but there's also a generational context at times. Yeah, but it also doesn't mean that everybody within a generation behaves in a certain way.
Absolutely.
So my take here is that what we also do, we're also able to define what is good and what is not so good.
Right.
Right. So I say my take there is a person needs to build on your innate personality and your temperament, and build on your strength, leverage your strengths,
Right.
and address your weaknesses. We tend
Right.
to talk a lot about SWOT analysis of businesses or brands, but I also advocate that even as human beings, we also should do SWOT analysis of human beings. Okay.
I like
Um,
that. I really like
and
that.
and by the way, it's one of the things that I speak about. I have a course that I developed in the year 2020 on personal branding, and I have a model around that. And one of the things that I speak to is do a SWOT analysis. So if you know your strengths, right, leverage your strengths. If you know your weaknesses, how do you address the weaknesses so that weaknesses do not override the strengths? So I think therefore when to speak to you about a gentleman in quotes, probably it's an innate personality, but because I'm conscious of that, I'll just ensure that I build on it and leverage it. And I'm conscious of not doing anything that would negate what perhaps is a strength. Now, that's not to say that everybody must have the same demeanor.
Right.
Um, some other people will have a more outgoing demeanor that works
For them.
for them. All right. And interestingly, if I may go back in history, um, on my report card, when I was in primary school, the demeanour wasn't exactly working too well, and I was shy and introverted. And
Mhm.
my teacher, class teacher, wrote in my report card once that Lampe does good work, but he prefers to work on his own. That he will do better if he opens up, collaborates, and things along those lines. And I recall my dad, and this is probably as a an 8 or 9 year old. And unfortunately, my dad kept good archives, so I saw the report card myself. And I remember my dad saying to me, "Look, he understands my nature, but that he would like I should encourage me to just be a bit more open." And the following report card, the teacher says to me that since Langwe was given a role in the Christmas concerts, he has become more open and coming into himself. Now, reading that as a young person, and I still remember that, and I'm talking of how many years ago, I still remember that.
Wow.
So it says to me a consciousness that even if it might seem to be a positive, there are ways in which you can leverage on it and be even stronger. So one of the things it helped me to do was be more conscious, even if my personality is phlegmatic.
Right.
Um, how do I try to come out of myself and
Right.
build on that? And I think that's using as an example. I think I both ways. Whether you're a gregarious person, there are ways perhaps you
Right.
want to tone it down if it's impacting upon the results or the outcomes that you desire. So I think for every one of us, we can leverage our strengths, but also ensure that what is a strength is not a limiting factor as well.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. I've put it on my to-do list now. Just for my information, like, and for those who are listening, this personal branding course you refer to, is it still available?
So it's not online at the moment.
Okay.
It can be activated, but what I'm currently doing, one of these many things that I'm doing that I need to complete, is I'm putting into a
Right.
book format,
Right.
which I'm hoping in the next few months would either be published as a hard copy or as an ebook
Okay.
that can then have access
Okay.
to. So that's one of the projects that I'm currently working on.
Okay. Okay. When once it's ready, please feel free to reach out to us so that we
Will do.
can, we can promote it on the pod as well.
Will do. Thank
I
you.
wanted to then go into the policy conversation, which was the second
Yes.
conversation I said I'd like to get your perspective on. Is that between policy in the current state of it, i.e., regulatory frameworks, what you can or can't do, etc. I would also then like to get your perspective on the on policy making around artificial intelligence. And it's a conversation I've been having with the CMOs I've had on the pod.
Mm.
The sentiments are different, especially on the AI side. Some people are excited about it, some people are not. Uh, so I wanted to get your take on how can policymakers or policy making be more collaborative? How can it be more um, in tune with the current realities of the consumer, of platforms, of channels? Because certain policies might make sense for this channel, but doesn't make sense for this channel. How can policy making be more collaborative and be more forward thinking?
Great. And I think this is a truly live issue. Interestingly, I had this conversation with a few people yesterday in the office because of an issue that had arisen with
Wow.
the one of the regulators.
Right.
So I think, first of all, I think that let me start situating from the Nigerian perspective first.
Right.
And I think that regulators need to have a better understanding of what their roles are in the sense that role is two or threefold on a high level perspective. One is to ensure that things are done properly, ethically, for the good of the consumer and all stakeholders involved. Two, I do believe that regulators should also therefore be looking to how regulation can help grow the industry. And I think that that's really important. And tied to that is if regulators and regulations meant to help do things right and also help grow the industry, it therefore means that regulation should not be to stifle the operations or the growth of industry.
Right.
And therefore, in defining those roles, it means that policy making should have IOP collaboration and stakeholder engagement.
Right.
I believe that policy making and the policy makers should have what I will call a web, if you will, or a wheel of stakeholders. So, who are the stakeholders? The
Right.
stakeholders will include the consumers, it will include the government, it will include the practitioners, and therefore you define those stakeholders and say what are the interests that the stakeholders, each of the stakeholders, and therefore how can we support each of the
Right.
stakeholders to get a
Right.
win-win situation. So consumer interest is protected, industry growth is also secured. Now, so stakeholder engagement is important. So before any policy is put out, I believe there should be conversations with
Right.
all the stakeholders, and as
Right.
conversations are held, then policies are fine-tuned. And because conversations and collaboration is involved, when policies are therefore issued, everyone feels a part of the process. And since you're a part of the process, the likelihood of buying is
Right.
is is higher. So
Right.
clearly, there's a space for better collaboration, stakeholder engagement on the part of policy makers.
Right.
Now, moving on to the issues around AI, artificial intelligence, because this is something relatively new,
Right.
it means that everyone in the ecosystem is is also learning.
Right.
We none of us knows it all, whether in the Nigeria context, the African context, or globally. I mean, on a light note, about last week, I saw a design by one of my art directors, and my first question, it might have sounded silly. My first question was it was to celebrate Mother's Day, and it was so I had a photo of a mother and a daughter, right? And my first question was, I hope we have the model rights for this. And he replies to me and says, "Oh, it's actually AI generated." And I said, "Oh, I see." All right, but then it made me think that
Right.
this truly looked like two people who actually are walking the surface of the earth right now, and it's AI generated.
Right.
So where you do draw the line, what if indeed there are actually two people somewhere amongst the 8 billion people in the world that actually look like this?
Right.
So I began to think, therefore, there's a lot to unpack and understand. And
Right.
I think that policy making in that regard, I think we haven't even begun the journey.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of conversations that need to be initiated around the use of AI in advertising within the marketing space. Um,
Right.
Otherwise, there could be real danger and trouble
Right.
ahead.
Right. I mean, we've seen on the podcast I had the global chairman of Advertising Week, and we had this conversation as well, and he referenced his statement was Um, the Along these lines, I may not be able to remember verbatim, but it was that as users or as practitioners, we have outfoxed government agencies, and government agencies continue to play catch up. In some markets, it might be slightly different because, for example, in Nigeria, I know that the government institution that oversees that tech space is trying a lot of initiatives to try to make sure that as a market and as a government as well, Nigeria is more or less AI ready. And I think that there's so much to learn, like you rightly said. There's so much to unpack. There's a lot of education required across all stakeholder touch points. And we can only hope that as time goes on, everyone involved is approaching it, like you said at the beginning of this pod, with the right dose of humility. Um, I wanted to talk a bit about, because I have this idea that where you spend the most of your time career-wise tends to form your outlook within that profession. So let's spend the next maybe 1 or 2 minutes speaking about your time at Cadbury, because I think it is impossible to tell your story and not really try to document what that experience was like from management trainee level all the way to C level. What was that journey like? What was that experience like? And how has that experience formed who you are today as a practitioner?
No, you're absolutely not right, Aitayo. My time in Cadbury had a profound um, impact upon me, and it's really difficult, even if I tried, not to acknowledge that and share those experiences as I go. And I spent, as I said earlier, on 18 years of my working career there, and it really was what you might say. It was my second job, but first job I did was just a temporary job. So you might say that Cadbury was my first job and gave me the opportunity to get into a marketing space that I desired, and had lots of experiences. I had a lot of opportunities, experiences to try many things within the market and sales, and even beyond there. So I think that it was an environment that encouraged learning and growth,
Right.
and that has also helped reinforce my mindset. So have a growth mindset, and I encourage people to have that as well. I worked with some of the best brands within the marketing space. Worked on Bonvita. I was Bonvita brand manager for many years. Worked on Tom Tom. Worked on Knorr seasoning cubes because Cadbury had the franchise at the time. So worked on a plethora of brands that address different consumer segments. Did some really great things. So I learned what you might call classical marketing, and because I always say that one of the best places to grow marketing is when you work on FMCG brands, and so I learned across the elements of the marketing mix, utilization, okay, and then also had an opportunity to work in sales,
Right.
right? So even beyond working in marketing and brand management, I also had the opportunity to work in sales after about 8 years in brand management. I was deployed to work in sales as field sales manager, and I had the opportunity of heading up the sales team, and that was a different experience on its own that sharpened me in terms of my commercial understanding and also leadership. And
Right.
then a few years later, had the opportunity to work outside of Nigeria in East Africa as marketing director for Cadbury East and Central Africa. Therein
Interesting.
again, worked on different brands, but also worked within a different geographic and cultural context that helped my leadership skills. So when I put all that together, I work with different human beings. Okay, what you might say, the good, the bad, the ugly, but also learned how to
Imagine.
manage different people. So when I put all that frame together, I think it's really shaped my leadership style. It's shaped my thinking around marketing, brand management till today. And many of the case studies that I share when I happen to facilitate um, courses or speak, naturally a lot of those cases are things that I lived through.
Wow. Thank you very much, sir. I think speaking of brand management, one of the questions I like to ask the CMOs I have on is the question of what is your elevator pitch? I'm borrowing that expression from our tech brothers and sisters. What is your elevator pitch when it comes to building brands that last? What is the recipe? What is the ingredients for building brand that lasts? And I say elevator pitch because to communicate the time frame required to express that.
Stay close to the market and the consumer.
Wow.
Identify and anticipate their needs and wants, and be agile in fulfilling those needs and wants. How short was that?
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. That really, really captured it. Thank you so much for your time. As we start to sort of wind down, I'd like to get, kind of try to get a sneak peek into growing up more on a personal level now. Um, just trying to lean in and see what was growing up like for Mr. Lampe Omoyele. Whether with your siblings or with your neighbors or in the community, fondest memories. What was that like for you, sir?
I think I'm grateful to God. I think growing up was a pleasant experience. Grew up in what you might call a middle class family in an urban neighborhood. I'm the oldest child of five,
Wow.
and my parents were what you might call quietish. So I guess part of my temperament has come from uh, that quietish
Right, right,
background, but
right,
also one that um, drove you without insisting for excellence.
right,
And also, like I use the word, a dose of humility. So there's a blend of a growing up with a sense of humility, but also that you will do well. Okay, and even when there were challenges or hiccups, there
right,
was love that helped you to address those
right,
hiccups. Even though yes, there
right.
was also some hard words, right? But there
Of
was all
course.
that sense, and also sense, and also the issues around integrity. So
Right.
it was a big deal. I mean, till today, I mean, a cousin of mine was sharing with um, my wife just about a week ago and saying he worked in the banking industry, and constantly in his mind, even when he had temptations, he would say, how would he face my dad
Wow.
if he heard? And that's the same principle that has guided every one of us. So that can help, and I think that we got the best education possible by God's grace, and so I think great growing up, and
Right.
I think that's kept us, my siblings, with our heads screwed on. Right. So I think that there's a value system that
Absolutely.
was imputed to us, to me, that one just keeps referencing as on. Well, I think it was a real pleasant growing up experience. Yes, we had issues, difficulties at times, but I think we were well grounded.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean, some of the things you talked about just now, integrity. God knows we need a big dose of that on the African continent,
Yeah,
and also the value system.
yeah,
And I think that there are institutions, whether within the family institution, whether within the educational institution, and every other institution that kinds of contributes
yeah,
to forming what we become. I think there's a huge responsibility and demand
yeah.
has been placed on those institutions now more than ever before. I wanted to ask you, um, I'm not asking, like I said, you're a young man, so this question
Yes,
do not suggest anything otherwise.
yes,
Uh, as you look back
yeah.
and look forward, what are those milestones um, uh, that are of the that you look back to and that still gives you, oh wow, I did that. Oh wow, we did that. And then when you look forward, what are those things that, just like your book that you mentioned, that's still something you want to do? So as you look forward, what are those things that you're still looking to get done?
Okay. So look back. I mean, obviously, there are many things that I'm grateful for. So let me respond to that one or two, basically from a marketing
Yes, yes.
career
For the
perspective.
sake of our audience, for the sake of our audience.
So I mean, first of all, I mean, this a critical milestone was how I got into marketing, and I've told that story already. I'm really
Mm,
grateful for that. So that was big. I think that the second bit was within 18 months of starting my marketing career, being given the opportunity to manage the Bonvita brand, which was and still is Cadbury Nigeria's flagship brand. That
wow,
was enormous. I didn't
wow,
think I deserved it. I was
wow,
scared of it. In fact, people told me I was in trouble um, to have been put such a huge burden on my shoulders, and I literally didn't want it. But for whatever reason, um, the marketing manager and marketing director at the time believed that this young person could do it. So I was thrown into the deep end. And again, like I keep on saying, learned as quickly as I could, got a lot of support. And I think that made a significant difference. And we, together with the rest of the team and other stakeholders, turned around the performance of Bonvita. And a highlight for me was the relaunch of Bonvita in the year 2000 from the brown and cream packaging that it had been for 40 years prior to that. The product development that was done, working with colleagues across the business, technical people, sales people, my line managers, and all. So that relaunch into purple for me was a major milestone because it then turned around significantly the performance of the brand. If I was going to mention another one, was the launch of Richoco in Nigeria. Um, from getting an, a piece of information that somebody else could have ignored, and utilizing that piece of information to um, propose a strategy to launch Richoco, got the business to approve it, and from the thought to launch, it took 6 weeks. Six
wow,
weeks from thought to launching a food beverage. And in that process, it gave us competitive advantage over competition. And within a year, Richoku became number 3 brand in Nigeria after Bonvita and Milo. So I think
Wow.
those are 2 examples or 2 or 3 examples that I'm grateful about to have been part of.
Right.
And then also getting out to East Africa to work and also helping the business to transform along with other colleagues therein.
Right.
Looking forward, I obviously would like to publish more books, especially around marketing. I have published a book of poetry, but
Oh,
I
wow.
but I yes would like to publish books and get more seriously into the broadcasting space. And I say seriously into broadcasting. So I'm hoping that I can do that as we go. So write books, broadcasting, and continuing to teach. So I do a bit of teaching now, and so I'm hoping that I can also continue to teach. And on the personal bit, um, looking forward to playing with and this is not to speak about my age. Looking forward to playing with grandchildren, right?
Oh, wow. Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. I think on a final note, I want to talk about Nitro,
Yes.
and just to get in 2 parts. The first part is that transitioning. Allow me to call it transitioning. From building brands within those FMCG conglomerates, to then going ahead to focus pretty much 100% on Nitro. What that transition was like, because obviously that would have required building something. Not like we are new to it, but I dare say building a brand in some ways is different from building a company. So I'm just curious, like what that transition was like for you, why you made that transition, and then what's next for Nitro going into the future.
Okay. So let me say that the transition started for me, interestingly, when I moved from GSK to Nielsen. And so up till then, I had worked in either FMCG, telco, all right, in that space, on the quote unquote client side, right?
Right,
I put it in
right,
quotes because I have
right.
this thought that really we're all working together in the marketing ecosystem. So whether you're client or agency, I'd rather say that we're working in the marketing ecosystem.
I get you.
But then when the opportunity to work with Nielsen as managing director came into play, it kind of aligned with my thought at that time that
Right.
ultimately what I wanted to do was support a range of brands and
Mhm.
businesses as from a consulting perspective.
Got
So
it.
all I had learned in prior years, working with Cadbury, working with Zain, which is now Airtel, working with Nutrisima, or working with GSK, um,
Right,
Nielsen will give me a broader perspective of working with many more companies and different brands. And
right,
also that put me in learning, again, another learning opportunity. So for me, that was a transition that required a different mindset.
right,
Okay. And I've
right,
been always open to putting myself to new things as far as um, my career, marketing, sales, or commercial is concerned. So Nielsen
right.
gave me that broader perspective, even though the focus was around research and data. But my mindset, interestingly, at Nielsen was at that time, whereas the focus of a lot of my colleagues then was more around just um, offering data. I
Right,
challenged us to go beyond just offering data.
right.
So my challenge to the team was offer data and insights and also propose potential strategies that will
Wow.
support the brands and businesses. So that was my mindset. So I pushed the team in that light. They don't just provide data, provide insights, provide strategy. And so when my time at Nielsen was up, that mindset remained that start to be on the consulting perspective, support businesses and brands. And I was particularly keen on, yes, support multinationals, but also particularly keen on supporting Nigerian businesses or homegrown businesses
Right.
that could therefore grow with the support I was given from a lot of, the experiences I had gotten.
Right.
And so that was mindset, and that was what drove also starting the boutique Lucent consulting company.
Got it.
It was in the process of that the opportunity to help Nitro. Nitro already was a business that was growing,
Right.
and so when I was invited to support it, it was now about building and taking Nitro to, as they say, another level, a new level.
Right.
Now, that then meant me coming to the advertising or marketing communications side of the ecosystem. So see this, I'd been on the client side, FMCG, telco, gone on to the research and data side.
Right.
Then
Right.
I was moving now onto the marketing communications perspective. So
Right.
everything was kind of pulled from the space. So how's it been? Again, it's been a good experience. There's also been one of learning and growing,
Right.
but also working with a plethora of brands and businesses and bringing to play experiences and new knowledge in terms of helping those brands and businesses grow in the marketplace. So I think that we're in a good space. Obviously, the economy is a recurrent challenge,
Sure.
but I think that one is pleasant. I won't say surprised because we put in the work, but I think that we're pleased with where we are. We can do a lot better. And
Sure.
therefore, one of the things that we're focusing on is things around content and technology. And we've also set up a second line business called ProTouch
Right.
that is focusing more around technology
Got it.
and trying to leverage technology to grow. So, what next really is about building our capabilities even more, um, utilizing technology a lot more, honing creativity, but also driving a consultant mindset. And I tend to say we do not position as an agency, but we try and
Right.
position as consultants that are helping brands and businesses to grow. So we're looking forward to Nitro one-to-one, even doing greater things in the market and supporting various brands and businesses across Africa.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. What do you when you want to switch off? What do you do? You know, this is your time. Like, what do you do to switch off?
Yeah, it's interestingly, my me time is just go quiet, go quiet, reflect. I take walks now and then. I like to walk now and then. Um, I used to read quite a lot. I am not sure I read as much as I should, so that's an
Right.
area that I should
Yeah.
do a lot
Right.
more as I used to in the past. I write. I think that is a bit obvious. So I write. So that my me time is also I write and spend some time with the family. I I'm also quite involved in church and also with some communities that outside of work, my old boys community. I'm
I
quite
see that. I
involved in
see that
that.
you put out a few things, and then you cite like the old boys or something like this.
Yeah, so I mean I won't do justice if I don't mention that I attended Igobi College. So
I know, I know,
we are
I
pretty
know.
proud of our
Pride.
school.
This is the one moment where you have allowed pride.
Yes, you got me. You got me there. You got me there. But we are no. I think it's not. It's not. I think it's just. I think we're just proud of our school. For some reason, there must be something they put in the water. But we are hooked on the school. But more seriously,
Yeah.
yeah, we some just something that we're proud of. So I'm not proud. I went to Gobi. I'm just proud of the
I
school.
I get you. I understand. Thank you very, very much, sir. It was such a joy, such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. There's a lot more that I want to talk about, but I know I have to let you go now. I can only hope that maybe in another few months I'll just slide into your DM on LinkedIn again. Like, let's do a sequel. Well,
Yeah,
thank you
thank you.
very
It's
much.
been
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. As an industry, and I think I speak for everyone, at least with it for my peers, when I say you are a remarkable example that we follow and admire. Whether when we have the opportunity, up close this way, or from a distance, you may know or you may not know, but the reach and the extent of your influence, just as a person, is incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. And on behalf of everyone, I want to say a very big thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
thank you, Rita, for very, very kind words, and I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for the grace to be a contributor. Like I said, it was grace, was fortune that enabled me get into this
Right.
career space. So I never forget that. So
Right.
thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, sir. I'll let you go now.
Thank you.
Bye bye, sir.
Bye bye.